You Are Mine. Illustrations by Sergio Martinez Max Lusso. You Are Mine. For voice, Rube and Carbian. God could not love you more than already does. Punchinello lived in a Wemmicksville just like Wemmick's. He was made of wood, just like other mimics maker, and just like the other mimics, sometimes he did silly things. Just like the time he began collecting boxes and balls. Things started getting crazy when a mimic turned Tuck bought a new box. Letters had boxes, but Tuck's new box, Tuck loved his new box. He thought it was the best box in the village. It was brightly colored and he was proud of it. Too proud, perhaps, he shoved up and down the street showing off his box. Have you seen this new box? He shouted. He would ask. Pass out on the street, would you like to touch the new box? Tuck marched up and down the Punchinello. Don't you wish you had a new box? He teased. Punchinello thought Tuck's box was beautiful and began to wish for a box of his own. Tuck kept showing off his box, thinking it was better than the other mimics, just because he had a new box. Nip, another Wemmick, disagreed. My box is just as good as Tuck's, he said, and he showed off his box to Wemmick on the other side of the street. Nick's box was not new, but it was a bit bigger and a bit brighter and more than Tuck could take. Tuck got very quiet and gave Nip a mad look. He had an idea. He stepped into a store and brought a ball. Now he had more things than Nip. He had a box and a ball. Nip Ford at Tuck's Hall. Nip could do better than that. He thought 2 balls. With a smile on his face, 2 balls, and a box in his hands, he marched over Tuck and smirked. Now I have more than you. Before you knew it, Tuck was in the store buying another box. Then Nip ran to buy another ball. Then Tuck bought a ball, and Nip bought a box. Ball, box, ball, box. Tuck, Nip, Nip, Tuck. On it went. Someone could have stopped the whole mess right there. In fact, this was the mayor tried to do. You two are being silly, he said to Nip and Tuck. Why, who cares who has the most toys? You're just jealous. Because you don't have any. Jealous? Of course, ha. But within a few moments, the mayor in his store buying in an armful of boxes and balls. Other Wemmicks began to join in. The butcher, the baker, the cabin maker, the doctor from the street, the dentist from down the street. Before long, every Wemmick wanted to be the one with the most balls and boxes. Some boxes were big, some were bright, some balls were heavy, and some were light. Tall people carried them, small people carried them. Everybody carried them, and everybody thought the same thought. Good Wemmicks have a lot. Not so good Wemmicks have a little. When a Wemmick walked down the center of the Wemmicks with a stack of balls and boxes higher than his head, the people stopped. Now there goes a Wemmick, they said, but the Wemmick passed only by the balls box, and the others would shake his heads and think maybe whip it, poor Wemmick, poor Wemmick, poor Wemmick. Of course, Pinocchio didn't want to be called a poor Wemmick, so he decided to get as many boxes and balls as he could. He searched through the closet and found one little ball. He dug into the pocket and found every money he could in a small box. I know I'll do, he declared. I'll sell my books to get more money to buy more boxes and balls. So he did. He thought of blue-green box clouds painted on the sides, but still he wanted more. All nights I'll get more money, he told himself. So he did. Bought a box, and then he was working nights. He didn't need his bed, so he decided, I'll sell my bed. And he did just that, to buy 2 more balls. Soon, Pinocchio had an armful, but Wemmick had more. Some of them had many boxes and balls. They were actually had trouble walking. It's hard to keep them up with the balls and boxes, they would say, acting like they were complaining, but they really were just bragging. Pinocchio wanted to be like Wemmick, so he told himself, and he worked more hours, and he tried to get more getting in sleep, His arms were tired and carrying toys. He didn't remember when he was last sat down to rest. And worst of all, his friends couldn't remember when he last came to play. He hadn't seen them for a long time. Said one day, "Why don't you come and play again?" asked Buddy Splint. Not everyone cared about the boxes and balls. Pinocchio's friends didn't. But Pinocchio cared more about having boxes and balls than he cared about having friends. "I got more work to do," he told himself. And his friends said hi. Pinocchio didn't care. He only cared about the boxes and balls, people thought. And no matter what he did, he couldn't buy enough things to get them attention. Finally, he had an idea. "I'll sell my house." He decided, "That's crazy." "Where will you live?" asked Splint. Pinocchio didn't know. He didn't care. And he could think about the boxes and balls who had more money. So he sold his house. He bought boxes and boxes and boxes and balls and balls and more balls. He carried so many toys he couldn't see what was going on. His stack was above his head. But he didn't mind. So what if his arms ached? So what if I kept walking into walls? What if I had no friends? What if he had boxes and balls, and when he passed Wemmick, they would turn and say, "Wow, he must be a good Wemmick." Pinocchio heard him. He couldn't see them, and he heard down and he felt good. "I'm good at Wemmick," he thought. But then somebody changed the rules. It was Mirror's wife. He was very proud of her boxes and balls. She not only had all of them, but she had a special kind of them. She thought about the fanciest stores with funny names and felt the names of the boxes so everyone would see them. She wanted to be the best Wemmick. One day she had an idea. "Not only will I have the most, but I also go highest." So she claimed by pocketing her boxes and shouted, "Look at me, everybody." Immediately, all the boxes and balls people tried to outdo her. One climbed on a fountain, another balcony, and then another onto a roof. It was a mirror who spotted the mountain over her. "Behind the village of the Wemmicks and Wemmick's Peak, I'm going to be top of the mountain," he shouted, hoping his first fear. The race was to see what Wemmick's would have the most to climb the highest. Wemmick's loaded the boxes and balls and began running up the mountain. It was crazy race. Since the wooden people couldn't see where the boxes were going, they jumped into the other. Since they were exhausted and they fell over the street, since the trail was narrow and some of them fell down side of it, but they kept going. Bring up the rear, Pinocchio. He was having a hard time the rest, and all good Wemmick for a short time. He wasn't used to carrying so many boxes and balls, but it was determined. He kept putting one more wooden foot on the other. But then, since then, he couldn't hear the other side of the trail, and he couldn't see. He didn't know what else he felt the trail, and he was new with that. All of a sudden, he was alone. It must be ahead of everyone else, he thought to himself, and so he kept climbing up and up. Then everybody kept thinking, "Good Wemmick, I'm pious at the most." About the time that Pinocchio's foot caught the edge of something, he tried to keep his balance. His toy swayed to the right and nothing left. He leaned back, then forward, then he kept forward, then he going to fall. Then he didn't know where else he walked up the trail of his house. He tripped up on step and porch and jumped down the front door of his workshop. When Pinocchio realized where he was embarrassed. For a long time he stayed face down on the floor, surrounded by his boxes and balls. When the balls rolled across the floor, stopped by his workbench, and then the wood carver turned around. "Pinocchio," that was his voice. It was a calm and deep and kind. When it still didn't move, he couldn't feel the wooden face turning red. "Look, I've been carrying this big load." The wary Wemmick climbed to his knees and he kept his head low, and there were boxes and balls, he said quietly. "Do you play with boxes and balls?" asked Sally. When he shook his head. "Do you like boxes and balls?" "I like the way they make me feel." "How do you make you feel?" "Important," Pinocchio answered with a small voice. Ellie observed, "So you've been thinking like Wemmicks. You've been thinking that the more and more you have, the better you are, the happier you will be. I suppose so, come with me. I want to show you something." Pinocchio lifted his wooden head and looked at Ellie for the first time. He was relieved that Wemmick wasn't angry. Pinocchio forward Ellie over the window. "Look at them," Ellie said. Pinocchio looked at the window and swarmed Wemmick still climbing the mountain, and then tumbling and stumbling, fighting with each other, eating even above the head. "Do they look happy?" Ellie said. Pinocchio said he looked at his head. "Do they look important?" "Not at all." Pinocchio said, "Notice the mirror and his wife." The mirror on the ground, he was stepping onto his back. She had a box on her head, and he had a ball in his mouth. "Do you think I created Wemmick's to act like that way? I said no. Felt a big hand on his shoulder. Do you know how much your boxes and balls cost you? My boxes, my books and my bed, my money and my house. My little friend, they cost as much as that. Punchinello was trying to remember the soul when Ellie continued. They cost you happiness. They even happy have you. Punchinello said no. They cost you friends, and most of all, they cost you trust. You didn't trust me when you were happy. You trusted them boxes and balls. Punchinello looked at the pile of toys, and all of a sudden, they didn't seem so valuable. I kind of messed up. That's okay, Ellie replied. You're still special. Pinocchio ducked his head and smiled. You're special. Because you're not happy. You're special because who you are. You are mine. I love you. Don't forget that, little friend. I won't. Pinocchio smiled. Then he paused at Ellie and asked, what should I do then with the boxes and balls? Perhaps you should give them to someone who really needs them. Pinocchio returned to sleep and stopped and said, Ellie, I don't have a place to sleep. Ellie smiled and laughed. Would you like to sleep here tonight? I sure would. I'm very tired. And so the Pinocchio slept on a bed of wooden shavings. He slept well and it was good housemaker.